20,000. 8 cakes. Bump. Put it down, shit. Yu Zhou stretched out his hand to take the card, pushed it with his right hand, and accurately stuck the 8 cakes into the seam of the card with his left hand. While everyone was probing, he quickly calculated, all big pairs are topped by 8 fan, 2 kong, 1 exposed kong and 1 concealed kong, 3 for each family, give money. Damn, kill me. What luck. There were complaints on the poker table one after another, and the hot pot shook the empty box. I have no money, I owe it. Transfer, no more calls. Yu Zhou said. Run if you win. Hot pot reluctantly took out his phone. Yu Zhou opened the group chat, stared at her after transferring the account, put the phone in his pocket, stood up and walked out the shutter door. Wan Wan is in heat, I don't know if she will pee indiscriminately, I have to go back and watch. Wan Wan is a little female cat fostered by her elder sister at her house. When her elder sister went to Shenzhen, she said she would be in foster care for 2 weeks. In a blink of an eye, it was almost 3 months. The kitten has not been neutered, and she has to go into heat once a month. After all, it is not her own cat, and it is not easy for Yu Zhou to lead her to undergo surgery. She can only open the video on the internet, follow popular science, and clumsily pat her buttocks. It's hard to say whether it can be relieved, but after 2 or 3 times, Wan Wan looked at her with eyes full of love. Yu Zhou put on his mask, watched a few hair boys come out, the hot pot pulled down the shutter door, it made a clatter like thunder, stomped on it, and bent over to lock the door. Once you go back, when will you be able to make an appointment again, great writer? There was a lollipop in the hot pot, like a cigarette. Writer shit. Yu Zhou put his hands in his pockets, and only then remembered that he forgot to take a taxi. After leaving her job at home for a few months, she seems to be not very proficient in some basic life skills. It seems a bit embarrassing for her to start hailing a car just now standing on the street. Yu Zhou is not a writer, but a writer. She can't tell what the difference is, but there is anyway. When talking about resigning and writing full-time, her old boss stared at Meng Do, pushed his glasses and asked her, writing novels make a lot of money? She nodded furtively. The old boss reluctantly bid farewell to her with the expression that she had climbed a high branch, and the small department was crouching. It's hard to say how much she earns from writing novels, but she forgot to tell her old boss that she didn't sign the contract. I don't want to do it anymore, just these 4 words literally. And the excuse of writing a novel is to make the rest of her life seem worthwhile. After thinking for a while, the bus arrived. Being a writer finally exercised her imagination, which made the process of waiting for the bus not too boring. She waved goodbye neatly, got in the car and leaned against the window to blow the wind. In Zhongcheng in August and September, the air used to be filled with the smell of firecrackers, which was so dry that it was on fire, but this year, there was too much rain, and it smelled like wet firecrackers. Facing the sticky wind, Yu Zhou returned to the community, her bangs were blown up, she looked like a fool, she pushed the steel door a few times in the elevator, but still couldn't press it, she resigned to her fate and opened the door with her bangs upright. Fingerprints still have to be pressed a second time before the door lock can be recognized by a fool. The door has been opened, said the plain female voice. Yu Zhou kicked off his shoes, changed into slippers at the entrance, and hung his mask on a hook, thinking that he could use it again next time he went to the nucleic acid test. While trying to take off his clothes, he shouted Wan Wan. Wan Wan did not come out to greet her as usual. She looked up and saw a woman sitting on the sofa. Fuck. Her hands were still crossed and she was holding the hem of the dress, and she was about to take it off her head with an effort. The action at this moment shouldn't be swearing, but her legs are a bit weak, if she doesn't swear, she might kneel down. The woman was sitting on a leather sofa covered with a layer of blankets, combing her hair in an ancient bun with pearls and hairpins dangling, and wearing a dark red cross-neck dress from an unknown dynasty. It was layered and complicated. At this moment he also looked at her in a little panic. Yu Zhou was suddenly startled and laughed. He ha 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 ha. Her laughter rose from her chest, which was weirder than the woman who suddenly appeared. She doesn't want to, but she has been like this since she was a child. When her legs are cramped and painful to the extreme, and when she is scared to the extreme when watching horror movies, she wants to laugh. Maybe it's because, if you laugh more lively, you can be more or less emboldened. The woman was startled, her neck was slightly pulled back, and her face was pale. His uncle's, looks more like a ghost. Yu Zhou put her hand on the door lock, sensed it several times, but couldn't align with the infrared port, so she squeezed the handle tightly and asked the sofa, "Who are you?" She quickly analyzed in her mind, "People? Ghost? It cannot be a ghost, and the appearance of a ghost will not be of this virtue." She writes a lot of supernatural novels, and she usually wants to create some momentum. Besides, she also seems to be quite scared. She has never heard of ghosts scaring people, but she has heard of people scaring ghosts. If people, it's easy to deal with as a human being. She's a girl, half a head shorter than her, so she shouldn't suffer from a fight. So she tried to calm down and squeezed out a relaxed smile. "Did you go wrong?" The girl looked at her, looked her up and down, and finally met her eyes. "I seem to have gone wrong." The voice is nice, like a CV. It is still ancient, and the sticky summer night is refreshing. Yu Zhou then took his hand from the door lock, held the phone, and talked nicely. "Then, don't you want to go back?" She suddenly thought of another possibility, in case, this girl is crazy. If he made a mistake, he still sat at someone's house, as if he had made up his mind not to move. The girl glanced at her, her watery eyes drooped, and she didn't speak. Yu Zhou stepped on the ground calmly, her legs were no longer weak, so she walked to the dining table, pulled out the stool and sat down. "Did you encounter any difficulties?" "Yes." The girl nodded. "What's wrong?" Yu Zhou frowned. "Did you get kicked out for cosplay?" The girl looked up, then shook her head. "I don't understand." Yu Zhou Chong sighed and rolled up his sleeves. "Are you hot?" "Hot?" The girl hesitated. "Turn on the air conditioner, I'm hot too." "Air conditioner?" Yu Zhou stretched out his finger. "The thing in your hand is long." "Hey, yes, pick it up, see the yellow button in the middle, press it, beep, it's done." She was so tired, holding her forehead to wait for the cool breeze, thinking why she had to dub the remote control just now. The girl trembled in fright, neither her hands nor her feet were holding the remote control. She moved her body twice, staring at the air outlet vigilantly. Do you know fairy art?" The girl mustered up her courage, her eyes lit up. "Immortal art? You will call the wind and the rain." "Ha ha 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 ha." Yu Zhou laughed again, laughed twice and then retracted, broken. "You are only good at fairy arts. Tell me, how did you come to my house?" "I was about to go to bed when there was thunder outside. When I opened my eyes, I was here." "Oh," Yu Zhou looked at her indescribably, "was struck by lightning." "That's true." Not really, the thunder didn't hit her, but she saw Yu Zhou's crazy appearance, and decided to admit it. It can be understood in this way. If the girl wants. I think. Yu Zhou was furious. "Do you know what I'm thinking now?" "I don't know." "I want to call the police." "Hold," the girl bit her lips in panic. "Hold tight." Yu Zhou was impatient. "You've been playing around all day long, the homophonic melody has left my world." The girl was at a loss, as if she was about to cry. The words were a bit heavy. Yu Zhou calmed down, and went through the matter from beginning to end. "You, in the middle of the night, appeared at my house. I didn't chase you away, right? It can be seen that I am kind, warm, low-key, righteous and awe-inspiring. Nice guy with capital letters. Isn't it?" Yes. I think you look good and speak clearly, and you don't seem to have a problem with your brain. Since you have difficulties, just speak up and keep going around in circles. How can we solve it? If you don't go, how can I sleep? The girl thought for a while, made up her mind, and said eloquently, my name is Xiang Wan. I was born in the 24th year of Xinyuan. I am 18 this year. My father, Xiang Yu, is the chancellor of the left. Princess Jiaozong Zhehua's daughter, eldest brother Xiang Pai, was the governor of Yan'an at that time, and the doctor of imperial history. She is not yet married, but she is married to. Stop. Started memorizing the family tree. Yu Zhou propped his chin with his left hand, bit the dead skin on his mouth, remained silent for a while, then changed his tone when he raised his head again, is what you said true? Yes. Xiang Wan nodded. Yu Zhou took out his mobile phone, opened the call interface in front of her, pressed the three numbers 110, and put his index finger on the dial button expressionlessly, is it true? Xiang Wan watched her movements inexplicably, a little curious about what she was holding, but only for a moment, then looked at her again, and said seriously, it's true. Yu Zhou turned the phone in his hand and locked the screen. Don't call the police anymore, she dare not. Xin Yuan, which dynasty is it from? Li Chao. Oh, yes, I have memorized it from high school textbooks. Xiang Wan moved his neck uncomfortably. So, you have time-traveled. Yu Zhou pursed his lips and concluded. That's what makes a writer good, he's well informed. Where? It's going from one time and space to another. It is not mentioned in the time-traveling novels that the ancients who traveled here are like idiots, they can't understand anything. Then, Xiang Wan looked around, his face still pale, maybe. Now it's 2022 AD. She held on to the armrest of the sofa, as if struck by lightning, then my parents. If nothing else happens, he should be dead. Xiang Wan held onto his chest and grabbed his sleeve to wipe away his tears. Yu Zhou started to have a headache. Her waist also began to hurt, and she urgently needed to lie down on the bed. Well, I won't call the police tonight, and you will stay here first. Go to the end from here and turn right. This is the second bedroom. The bed is not made. You can make it yourself. There is a way to test whether what you said is true. I will tell you tomorrow. I'm going out for a while. Xiang Wan blinked her tearful eyes and listened sobbingly. When she finished speaking, she choked up and said, what can I do? The pearl hairpin on your head is bang bang. Give me one tomorrow. I'll go to the antique market to see if it's an antique. Ha ha ha. Yu Zhou laughed at the end. I don't know why, but I poked her to laugh. Xiang Wan watched her smile while sniffling, feeling very sad. But there is no other way at the moment, she is alone and helpless, so she can only let her go, so she nodded knowingly. Hey, Yu Zhou stood up, where are the bowls? Xiang Wan took a breath and met by chance, so close? Oh, my sister's cat is called Wan Wan. A bowl for eating. It always rubs against me, I'm afraid, so I put it in the cabinet. Yu Zhou was shocked, which cabinet? Xiang Wan pointed aside. That's me. The closet for clothes. It's not ordinary clothes, but clothes that need to be dry cleaned to be worn out to support the appearance. Yu Zhou walked over with a disheveled face and opened it. Not surprisingly, the shirts and black coats that had been ironed were completely scuffed by bowls, and cat hairs were piled up on them, and no one was spared. She took out Wan Wan, turned her head and smiled slightly at Xiang Wan. Why, what? Xiang Wan's heart skipped a beat. It's nothing. Yu Zhou passed her with the cat in his arms and went to the master bedroom. When the jade hairpin is sold, let's share some money, she thought. Coming out of the bathroom, Yu Zhou still hasn't recovered. Even though she claims to be a calm person, this matter is really beyond the outline. Fortunately, she is a novel writer, and fortunately she is only 25. If it was her mother who was facing Xiang Wan today, she would probably have a heart attack. Speaking of which, Yu Zhou was still faintly excited. Since she was a child, she felt that she shouldn't be so mediocre. Since she was a child, she felt that she should be a person who does great things. In other words, there must always be some secrets that are different from ordinary people. In the 4th grade of elementary school, Yu Zhou began to gradually realize the true meaning of life after he tried to lie to his classmates that he was a Sailor Moon who visited the world secretly. The true meaning of life is the process of gradually accepting one's own ordinariness. And the appearance of the weird Xiang Wan lit a fire in her boring days. The reason why she didn't call the police was because she didn't dare to call the police on the one hand, and on the other hand, the soul of the middle school girl who was brought back to life was shining brightly. Time travel, it's so cool. So she wiped her head, turned a corner and went to look at Xiang Wan in the living room. Still sitting upright, the shaking of the head is very small. Yu Zhou went over to say hello, your waist is fine, isn't it? Ah! Xiang Wan raised his eyes. After washing away the fatigue and the turmoil, Yu Zhou leaned against the corridor hallway to watch her. It is indeed very similar to an ancient man, his eyes are hesitant to speak when looking at people, first he taps on the ground, and then he lifts it up wobbly. Modern people seldom have such restraint. The last time I saw a similar Gu Panchengui on TV seemed to be the 87 version of Dream of Red Mansions. Take a bath. Yu Zhou paused, take a bath. Xiang Wan was somewhat pleasantly surprised, stood up and was about to salute, Miss, thank you. You don't have to. Yu Zhou was also brought up politely, and raised his hand to stop her, don't salute in the future, I won't come back. Yes. Come here. Yu Zhou slipped on his slippers, walked through the corridor, and opened the first door on the right. There is a bathroom with separate wet and dry, marble sink and wall-mounted toilet, and a shower room inside. Xiang Wan walked in hesitantly, stepped on the absorbent floor mats, and then stepped on the small tiles, looked up inadvertently, and saw a clear self on the wall. Her pupils dilated suddenly, and she stared at the mirror dumbfounded. Mirror, don't be afraid. Yu Zhou took off the shower head and tried the temperature with his hands while explaining. There were also mirrors in the Li dynasty, but they were only bronze mirrors, which could only vaguely show a shadow, how could it be so finely detailed? Xiang Wan tilted her head to the left, and the tassels hit her temples. She looked up from the mirror, and even the movements of her eyelashes were distinct. She turned to the right again, dotted emerald green flashed, lifelike. Her lying silkworms were piled up, looking at the girl in the mirror, she raised the corners of her mouth shyly. Bright eyes and bright teeth, as bright as clouds. Xiang Wan raised his head to look at the small lamp above his head. This lamp was very beautiful and full of light, making the person in the mirror look like he was in a fairyland. The future. She murmured, feeling the future so concretely for the first time. It is the realm of immortals that cannot be described by master painters, and the bliss that cannot be carried by poems and songs. Especially at this moment, when the hot air came from the glass, she in the mirror was half blurred, like a dream. She moved closer, the tip of her nose almost fell in love with the cold mirror, touched it slightly, and retracted again. Peeking at Yu Zhou adjusted the water temperature, held the shower head in one hand, leaned against the glass door and raised an eyebrow at her. Yu Zhou wanted to say, you wasted a lot of my water. But from Xiang Wan's point of view, she was waiting for her patiently, her hair and white t-shirt were half wet, making her tall and beautiful. Seeing that she finally looked at him, Yu Zhou backed out, plugged the shower head back into the wall hanging, pressed the switch with his hand, and the water stopped. The water temperature is adjusted, you lift this up, and the water will come out. Remember to stand back a little when driving, so as not to splash the cold on your body. Oh, you'd better take off your clothes first. You are the eldest lady, do you want someone to serve you when you take off your clothes? Yu Zhou laughed. No need. Xiang Wan blushed. That's good. Yu Zhou admired her independence. Pull over a dirty clothes basket, first pick out your own small clothes, pointing, take off your clothes and put them here, I will find you pajamas, open the door a little later, hang it on the doorknob, you take it yourself. I have new underwear and underwear. I haven't worn them through the water, and I'll find them for you later. Also, the new towel is the fourth from the left, blue, don't mix it up. Here, bath ball, you can use mine, can you use shower gel? She chattered a lot, but in the blink of an eye, she saw Xiang Wan frowning and looking at the shower head. She said reluctantly to cause trouble, but this was really embarrassing, I've never bathed like this before. Ah! The water is falling from the sky, covering the head and face. I think it's a bit dangerous. Xiang Wan said. If she encounters such a heavy rainstorm, it will be difficult to hold an umbrella, and her parents will not allow her to go out. This. Yu Zhou laughed, looked at the shower head and moaned twice. Xiang Wan lowered his head. Yu Zhou laughed for a while, then stopped, with a smile still in his eyes. Okay, then you can use the bathtub. However, the bathtub is in the main bathroom, it is the bathroom attached to my bedroom, don't you think it is inconvenient? Just do it. Does the girl feel inconvenient? Me? I'm okay. Yu Zhou took her to the master bedroom. By the way, my name is Yu Zhou. As for you, Xiao Zhou's Zhou. Miss you. Xiang Wan smiled. It's called Yu Zhou. We don't like being called girls anymore. Yu Zhou. Yet. Yu Zhou glanced at her, her voice was so sweet. After preparing things for Xiang Wan and putting in water, and training him on how to use shower gel, Yu Zhou closed the door and came out. He played with his phone on the bed for a while, listening to the faint sound of water inside. The sound of the water suddenly became louder, and there was the sound of small footsteps, as if she was wiping her body. Yu Zhou suddenly remembered an important thing. She ran to the door of the bathroom and knocked twice. May I ask, do you, Li Chao, have your feet bound? There was a pause inside, and a voiceless voice came through the door. No rap. That's good. Yu Zhou put down the big stone in her heart. She was afraid that Xiang Wan would change her slippers, so she took a quick look and couldn't bear it. Sitting on the edge of the bed and waiting for Xiang to come out, she was wearing Yu Zhou's cotton trousers and a long-sleeved t-shirt, holding a towel and imitating Yu Zhou's wiping her head. The adaptability is quite strong, and Yu Zhou gave her a high score in the course Modern Life Compulsory in his heart. Yu Zhou smiled with satisfaction. Am I caring? You girls in ancient times didn't show their arms or legs. If they were seen, it would be very serious, so I specially found long sleeves. Xiang Wan looked complicated, glanced at Yu Zhou's bright calf, and said after consideration, it's not a strange thing for me to open up to the people and show my breasts. Speechless, looking at her eyes, it seems that she dislikes this modern person who is too conservative. Yu Zhou was a little embarrassed, looking for something to say, glanced twice, and frowned. Are you not wearing underwear? Well, this belly band, I don't know how to wear it. Xiang Wanyang raised the small item in his hand. Yu Zhou coughed twice. This. You sleep, don't wear it first. Xiang Wan glanced at her. I have to wear it tomorrow, won't you teach me? Help me put it on once, and I will know it. Inconvenient. We're both girls, so what's the inconvenience? Xiang Wan has a maid to serve her when she urinates, eats, drinks, changes clothes, and even takes a bath. She doesn't avoid others, so she doesn't feel any inconvenience. Yu Zhou frowned, smiled, and tisked, not knowing what to say. Looking up, seeing that Xiang Wan was still staring at him inquisitively, he decided to say, I'm Lala. Pull, pull. The parrot parroted. Lala is, tisk, a very foreign style. Western style. Just kidding. That's right, I like women. Yu Zhou looked back at her bluntly, although many people have misunderstood that lesbianism means being interested in all the women around them, in fact it doesn't. But, help me, it's still inconvenient to wear underwear. Understood. Aren't you surprised? Yu Zhou raised his eyebrows. Xiang Wan put away the underwear, break the sleeves and divide the peaches. Long Yang is good, what's so special about Shimojing, men and women? Ah! Yu Zhou was speechless. These, don't you have any textbooks in your cake? Xiang Wan was puzzled. Although she didn't know what kind of textbook is the textbook in cakes, and whether there is a textbook in wine, but just now Yu Zhou said it, and she wrote it down. It's not like that. Yu Zhou smiled and said to her, are you tired? Go back to the house and rest for a while. Let your hair dry naturally. I won't use the hair dryer for you. You have too much information today. Not tired. Xiang Wan shook his head. Yu Zhou sighed, when I asked you if you were tired, it meant that I wanted to sleep. Understood, the eviction order. Xiang Wan curled her lips lightly, then turned her head and went to the second bedroom. Yu Zhou looked at her back, rubbed her neck, shook his head and smiled, found a comfortable position to lie down, and then called Wan Wan at the end of the bed, Wan Wan, come here. The kitten was still in heat, and when it heard her voice, it was very excited, it whimpered twice, and ran to lie down in her arms. The little furry head was buried in her arm, rubbing it up and down, the hips were raised, the tail was stretched straight, and the legs were kicked back. Poor. Yu Zhou hugged it affectionately, and patted the base of its tail lightly. It's not uncomfortable anymore, it's not uncomfortable anymore. She coaxed softly, and fell asleep holding the bowl. Yu Zhou woke up naturally after sleeping, frowning as usual, turned on the phone, checked the time, read the messages and private messages of readers on Weibo, then opened the long pendant, and read the comments received the day before one by one. Go to the group again and see what the group of repeaters are repeating. Early, 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 Yu Zhou got out of bed, opened the curtains, the sun was warm, and it was another ordinary day. There seems to be something different. After 3 seconds of bluntness, he remembered the girl next door. Opening the door and taking a look, he found that the bedroom door was closed, so Yu Zhou decided to go to wash up first. If she was alone at home, she would go through the grooming process irregularly, but now that there are strangers, it is different. He walked out refreshed and exhaled, and knocked on the bedroom door, but no one answered. She went out and saw Xiang Wan sitting at the dining table, staring at the blind box doll next to the green plant. Cute, isn't it? Yu Zhou walked over, as if offering a treasure. Xiang Wan clutched his chest, it's scary. The head and face are so big, and this one has horns. She shook her head at Yu Zhou, human figurines are not sculpted in this way. The head, face and body must be in proportion to be delicate. Yu Zhou laughed until his cheeks hurt. Ask her again, have you brushed your teeth and washed your face? Xiang Wan was very distressed, yesterday was all right, but today I followed your advice and used that toothpaste and toothbrush, but my lower teeth bleed. She stretched out her index finger and pressed down her lower lip, look. It's a little bit of inflammation. You may not be acclimatized when you come here. Yu Zhou lay down on the table and took a closer look, I just vomited, there's nothing to make a fuss about. Hematemesis is a big deal. Xiang Wan disagreed. No need, it's very common here. Yu Zhou didn't bother to tell her that he wanted to bypass her and go to the kitchen. Aren't you hungry? Let me cook you an egg. You just came here, and you're afraid of stomach discomfort. Whitewater eggs are safe. Excuse me, girl. Xiang Wan also stood up, but he didn't dare to enter the kitchen. He just stretched his neck and carefully looked at the pile of copper and iron. Fortunately, Yu Zhou didn't turn on the fire, but only plugged in an egg cooker, and the movement was very small, so it wouldn't scare her. Yu Zhou glanced at her from the corner of his eye, and suddenly had a very mischievous idea. He wanted to stretch out his hand to twist the stove, and when the fire was rumbling, he looked at Miss Yang and shrank back palely. It was wonderful just thinking about it, she rolled her eyes and smiled. Turning around in my mind, I realized that Xiang Wan looks like a quail. The two sat and ate in silence facing each other. Xiang Wan didn't make any fuss this time, first observed Yu Zhou, picked up a glass to drink milk, put eggs in it, and then ate by himself. The bowls and chopsticks are obviously no strangers, but she still put on a gesture of asking the maid to test the poison first. After eating a simple breakfast, Yu Zhou was about to change clothes and go out. The two of them squatted in front of the laundry basket to pick and choose. Yu Zhou fell in love with the pearl tassel, and brought it to Wan, saying that it was her favorite. So he took some emerald hairpins and exclaimed in a low voice to Wan that they were very precious. Yu Zhou looked at her calmly. In the end, with Xiang Wan's reluctant expression, the two reached a consensus on Bai Yuchai. After saying goodbye to Bai Yuchai, Xiang Wan wanted to change clothes and go out excitedly. After all, she was a girl of 18 or 19 years old. After a night of sadness, her freshness came up. Yu Zhou was picking out clothes for her, and suddenly remembered a big event. She turned around and said seriously, "You can't go out. You don't have a health code." "Kin. Don't ask," Yu Zhou interrupted her, "do you know that Monk Tang has to go to every country to exchange customs certificates? It's similar to that. We have to show people a token every time we go. Only the pass token can be freely entered and exited. How to do it? It can't be done, you can't do it." Yu Zhou shook his head. "This is difficult, and she does not have an ID card, so it is difficult for her to move forward in this world. So tricky, really tricky." She quickly searched for the time travel novels she had read in her mind, but unfortunately she read too little, and she didn't know what to do with them. "You can't make a fake certificate, can you? This is also not in line with the core values and the review standards of Chenpi literature. No matter, let's squat at home first, this time travel can be crossed, and the car must have golden fingers before the mountain." She wrote the text, she couldn't understand it better. So Yu Zhou went out alone with Bai Yuchai under Xiang Wan's disappointed gaze. Before going out, I couldn't help reminding her of the precautions, telling her what she must not touch, and downloaded a few traditional Chinese books for her on the iPad to make sure she could understand them, and then went out with confidence. The antique market is in the south of the city, at the junction of several alleys. There is a flower and bird market in the front, and antique shops are open in the back. When the weather is good, the bosses also set up stalls in front of the shop, and there are some wandering vendors, pushing 3 rounds of guerrilla warfare. Yu Zhou put his hands in his pockets and walked in like a secret agent. I usually didn't look carefully when I passed by, but today I saw that every boss looked like a mouse. Every man is innocent, but pregnant is guilty. She always felt that people coveted her. Walking up to someone who was a little more honest, he squatted down, put on a look like he had been on the road all year round, and handed over his shoulder, "Do you want to accept it?" The posture and tone refer to the disc seller. The boss looked at her twice. "I am an antique seller, and I don't accept mobile phones." "What mobile phone?" I said. "I have the goods, will you accept it?" Yu Zhou was very depressed. "Goods? You palm the eye." Yu Zhou took it out mysteriously, Li Chao's white jade hairpin. The boss took a look and lowered his voice, "How much is the wholesale price?" "Damn!" Yu Zhou frowned and retracted. This is not the same as what the Tomb Raider article said. She stood up, walked around, and saw that the sales at each stall were not much different, and felt that this way was unreliable. After thinking about it, he squatted down again, I'll ask you something. You're welcome, tell me. The boss fiddled with the old copper plates twice. I have a younger sister who is from the countryside. She just entered the city and has no household registration. How can she get in? The boss rolled up his sleeves and chatted with her. A black household. Ah, it was because sons were favored over girls at that time, and the family did not provide household registration. Unreported population. The boss nodded, understanding. A few big brothers next to him also squatted over, listening enthusiastically. A yellow-haired elder brother said, "You go to the police station to report, go to the police station and say that you have taken refuge in you, is it your relative?" "Ah, it's not a kiss either." Yu Zhou said. "That's okay," the bald brother leaned over, "Sanmu personnel can also settle down, and they will come down in half a month, as long as they can prove that they are from their own country." "Prove?" Yu Zhou blinked, wondering if Li Chao is a native of the country. This is also difficult. The boss was worried and doubted her. Could it be the daughter-in-law your brother and brother bought from which country? His eyes were focused, as if as soon as Yu Zhou hesitated, he would immediately report her. "No, no, no." Fortunately, Yu Zhou shook his head very simply. "Oh, then you should go to the police station and ask." The elder brothers squatted and moved away, swaying their buttocks. Yu Zhou stood up, his legs were numb. Finding nothing, she habitually walked back with her pocket in her pocket, mechanically thinking of a way amidst the parrot's funny voice. The phone vibrated suddenly. She picked it up, and a contact named F sent a message, "Mr. Yu, the CV of the radio drama has been confirmed, and the main character is Su Chong." 3 exclamation points were used in a row, and the other side was very excited. "Su Chong, of course I'm excited, the first T-line female CV in the industry has nearly 1 million fans, and she has starred in several top IPS, each of which is quite popular." She never thought that she could invite Su to sing for her sloppy writing. The platform had never discussed the plan with her before, so she didn't know about it until this moment. She should be very happy. The pie in the sky is said to be small, and Guangzhou Niazu is big again. I wonder if there is a moderate idiom that can properly describe this happy event. Yu Zhou bowed his head and typed a few words. "Ahaha, you are so amazing, you can invite teacher Su." Yeah, I didn't expect that either, I'm so excited." The other person replied quickly. Yu Zhou smiled, locked the phone, and the parrot by his ear turned into a magpie, announcing the good news with great enthusiasm. "It's so noisy." Yu Zhou hummed to the parrot and took a taxi home. She suddenly remembered that in fact, just leaving the job for a few months was not enough to make her forget about taking a taxi in advance. "The reason why I don't have this habit is because in the past, Su Chang always drove to pick her up. Then go back to Su Chang's house. The door is open." Silly, the smart door lock is still the same sentence. Mechanical, but also very dutiful in welcoming her. "On countless nights when I go home alone." This door lock was chosen by Su Chang at that time. At that time, Yu Zhou said that he wanted a Xiaomi brand, which was cheap, and the advertisement was very versatile. Su Chang disagreed, and chose an unpopular brand whose product information could not be found on Doubao. Moreover, it has no other skills except for opening and closing the door. Unlike Xiaomi, it can also have an electronic doorbell and call the police. I don't know if it is Xiaomi, can it detect Xiangwan and transmit it to itself in time? Thinking of Xiangwan, Yu Zhou took a look inside from the entrance. She was still sitting at the dining table, looking down at the iPad seriously. "Missy, she has no habit of welcoming people, and I'm afraid I'm still thinking that it's really inappropriate for me to approach her without communicating." Yu Zhou picked up the bowl that trotted to the front, changed his shoes and walked inside. Only then did Xiangwan raise his head and said with a smile, "I'm back." "It's so familiar," Yu Zhou smiled, making it look like his own home. The second sentence is, How much silver did you pawn? When Xiang Wan asked where she was going in the morning, she said she sold it to an antique shop, and Xiang Wan asked what happened after she sold it, and she said it was placed in the window of the antique shop, and asked Xiang Wan, can it be redeemed? Of course money is fine, Yu Zhou said. Then Xiang Wan thought for a while and said, my hairpin, I think ordinary people can't buy it easily, so I will treat you as a pawn, and I will redeem it when I have silver taels in the future. Yu Zhou let her think. Of course she didn't think that Xiang Wan would become rich in 2022. She took out the jade hairpin and returned it to Xiang Wan. When she asked how to get a certificate for Xiang Wan, she suddenly realized that she had accepted Xiang Wan's story completely, so there was no need to use jade hairpins to tell the truth from the fake. Xiang Wan was taken aback, and took it over. Why didn't you take it? Oh, Yu Zhou sighed, and sat aside. There was a store that paid a sky-high price and could transfer the money immediately. The moment I handed it over, I thought, these things are the only things you want in modern times. I can't bear to lose one thing. Xiang Wan was really moved. He glanced at the hairpin, then at her. You are right, if I can't go back, this suit of clothes and a head of pearls will be the relics left by my parents. Yes, Yu Zhou sighed, pearls and hairpins have a price, but family affection is priceless. Just keep it, and just remember the favor you owe me. Just opening your mouth and talking nonsense with a pen is also a professional skill. I remember. Xiang Wan said seriously. He wanted to put Bai Yuchai into his sleeve, but found that the sleeve was different, so he raised his hand and pulled out a tissue, and carefully placed the hairpin on it. Yo, you know how to draw paper. Yu Zhou praised her. Xiang Wan tilted his head, concealing his modesty under modesty. After watching it twice, you will be able to understand. Keep going. Yu Zhou applauded. Xiang Wan was speechless and continued to read. Yu Zhou folded his hands on the table, feeling a little bored, took out his phone to check the time. It was past 11 o'clock, and it should be just right to order takeaway now. What do you want for lunch? She quickly opened the delivery app and swipe on it. You decide. Then let's eat wontons. There should be some in ancient times, anyway, in martial arts dramas. Yu Zhou muttered, received a red envelope, and it was done. When putting down the phone, he suddenly cleared his throat. That. Hey! Xiang Wan raised his head. Let's discuss with you about food expenses. Food expenses. Ah, I know you definitely won't pay this at home, but it's different if you're out of society, in the rivers and lakes. It's no problem if I treat you to this meal, I can afford it, but if you live after a long time, I'm a little bit difficult. I just left the job, that is, unemployed. Hey! I'm at home, you know? No income. When it came to the last few sentences, she exaggerated her mouth shape, and it was only after she finished speaking that she realized that Xiang Wan was just an ancient person, so it wasn't that she couldn't hear. She had watched Ace vs Ace too much, and when she saw the other person's confused face, she thought she was wearing headphones and watching her gesture. I understand. Xiang Wan pondered and nodded. Then why did you resign and when will you go out to work? She asked sincerely. Resignation. Resignation is not resignation. I am not an official, just an ordinary guy. I resigned because the job was too boring. As for when I will look for a job again, Yu Zhou frowned, I haven't figured it out yet. What should I do? I didn't work for long, you don't know, I didn't work for long at the last job. Actually, my ability is quite good, but I'm lazy. She stopped and sat upright. Why am I telling you this? It's not about how long I work, but about your food expenses. You want to give me money, silver, understand? Xiang Wan bowed his head and glanced at Yuchai. I could have been a silver tael, but you didn't. Well, back to the original starting point. Yu Zhou earnestly said, you can't rely on your parents' things, you have hands and feet, you have to support yourself, you should work to earn money, and then give me food expenses. Xiang Wan shook his head, I can't work. Why? I don't have a healthy horse. Captain Yu Zhou took a deep breath, yes. Health code, ID card, she can't go anywhere. Her ears suddenly felt a little itchy. She raised her hand to scratch it, and then licked her lips, don't worry, don't worry. She glanced at Xiang Wan's calm eyes, and felt that it wasn't Xiang Wan who was in a hurry. Wait, I'll find you some work that you can do at home. Why don't you write essays? I'll use my mother's ID card to open an account for you. Ling Tang. Although Xiang Wan didn't know what the ID card was, he almost guessed it, and shook his head, this is a ghostwriter. What kind of pen? We now use the screen name to write articles, and if the screen name is yours, you will get it. Xiang Wan said nothing, but looked at her meaningfully. Okay, let's discuss it later. And you don't know how to use a computer. Exhausted, after some communication, she lay down on the dining table, not even bothering to get takeaway. After eating the wontons with a dejected face, she lay on the chair and thought about life. She always felt that God wanted her to travel to her home, so there must be some mission. Could it be that there is no theme, no opportunity, and she is allowed to travel here, eating and drinking for nothing? The door can't go out either. Eat more, she glanced at Xiang Wan who was scooping up wontons seriously, there will be a big challenge in a while. What challenge? Xiang Wan took a sip of the soup, raised his eyes and asked her. Yu Zhou glanced at the TV and smiled wickedly. According to what is said in the time travel article, when the ancients came to modern times and saw the real characters and scenes on TV for the first time, it was a panic like being struck by lightning and a mouse meeting a cat and dog. She really wants to meet. However, after sitting on the sofa with Xian Guan for a while, she only opened her deer-like eyes, first frowning and sweeping up and down twice, then slightly moved her buttocks, and then imitated Yu Zhou and focused on looking. Aren't you afraid? Yu Zhou put down the remote control, the people inside can move. Xian Guan looked at Yu Zhou, who frightened her with bared teeth, and nodded, yes, it's scary. Liar, Yu Zhou frowned, you're not afraid at all. Why not afraid? She was not reconciled. The black chicken in your hand, you put it aside when you were talking to me last night, the people in the black box are always moving, there are so many little people. Mobile phone. Yu Zhou glanced to the side, as if he was automatically swiping small videos on Weibo last night. She changed her tone, aren't you curious? I should say, these black boxes are dementors, what kind of magic does the girl practice? Xiang Wan frowned. Hiss, Yu Zhou was stunned, good standard lines, who did you learn from? The book you found for me. Which one? I randomly downloaded some, but I don't remember much. Damn it! How should I live in the modern society? Yu Zhou waved his hands, and slumped on the sofa in despair, continuing to watch A Covenant in a New Home. Watching and watching, she began to habitually explain science to the people beside her. This man is Yang Guang, let me tell you, since I watched the first episode of this show, he has been losing money. Yu Zhou said while thinking, where did this habit of popular science plot come from? After thinking about it, it should be her mother. When her mother watched Unforgettable, she told her hundreds of episodes in this way. Xiang Wan listened carefully, and nodded to her half understood. After watching for about half an hour, the phone vibrated again. FS WeChat, a WAV file. Teacher Yu, please listen to Teacher Su's audition. A second later, there was another one, good Su, good Su, good Su. Plus an emoticon pack of running in circles with a blushing face. Yu Zhou raised his eyes and saw that the file name was Sacred Shrine _Shenbai Su Chang. Sacred Altar is the name of the novel, Shenbai is the name of the character, and Su Chang is, the name of her ex-girlfriend. If this happened in a novel, it would be very touching. But it appears in reality. Yu Zhou clicked to open the file. I think it's still very bloody. For the 20-second sound file, Yu Zhou turned the volume button on the side to the maximum, and 3 seconds later, a familiar voice came from the receiver. The shrine is not filled with gods and Buddhas, but human greed. I have heard people say that God is actually very cute. He often gives gifts to people. The things wrapped in gift boxes are called talents. He probably gave all the gifts to Su Chang's voice. There is no other voice in the world like Su Chang. Refreshing and noble, with a slightly hoarse texture. Even the breath of pause is not too tempting, making you distracted, but you dare not be absent-minded. Some people stand at the top of the relationship between people. You don't need a pretty face, you don't need extraordinary talents, you only need a voice, and a voice alone. What's more, Su Chang has a pretty face and extraordinary talents. Deserves to be looked up to. Yu Zhou swiped his finger, closed the file, and returned a message to F. I feel fine so or not. So or not. F has been waiting for a long time. Very suitable. Of course it was suitable. When the article was serialized, Su Chang sat beside her, sometimes processing documents, sometimes listening to songs. Yu Zhou's prose has no prototype, but in those few glances he accidentally looked at Su Chang, the typed characters may not be without the character of his sweetheart. It couldn't be more appropriate. Originally, I wanted to advertise another article and link it, ha 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 ha. It's a piece of brainstorming, just for fun, I didn't take it seriously either. But as I wrote it, I felt that I was using my own article, and I was a little out of play, so I changed it to an original article. Only belongs to Yu Zhou, Sacred Shrine. FS WeChat chased him over, Teacher Yu. What's wrong? Are you dissatisfied? How could I be dissatisfied? But you are so calm. When I synchronized with you before, you were very excited. To finger.jpg I'm so excited. Received several voice messages. Is that right? When she sent me, I was running around at home. That's Su. Sing. She was willing to audition. When I sent an email to invite the drama, I was still very nervous. I didn't expect her to reply to the email. When it was time, he directly attached a sound test file to me, and asked me, is this sound okay? Woohoo, Su Chang, ask me if this voice is okay, I'm about to cry, I can imagine the tone of her questioning me, can you imagine? Can you? Teacher Yu. At the end of the talk, F spoke faster and faster, really crying with excitement. And when the messages came in one by one, the sound effects seemed to be sighing. Teacher Yu, let me tell you, Teacher Su is not only nice, but also dedicated. I didn't even give her the audition words, how dare I let her audition? She actually found the original text by herself, and tried highlight lines. She actually read the original novel. Maybe you don't know it. In fact, it is not necessary to read the original novel. It is usually enough to read the script. I know, why don't I know? She always reads the original, and often stays up late to read it. Yu Zhou whispered in his heart. A few heartwarming emoticons were sent over there, and Yu Zhou clicked on the plus sign in the WeChat dialog box, wanting to choose a suitable emoticon to go back to. So off, ready to type. Type delete, delete type, the cursor keeps flashing. Xiangwan's voice interspersed from the dialogue of the TV series, Su Chang, is it a gentleman? I heard the person at the other end call her Teacher Su. No, Yu Zhou came back to his senses, casually sent a smiling face, and explained to Xiangwan, CV is a voice actor. The novel I wrote will be a radio play, which is similar to the TV series we watch now, but there is no picture. Listen. As a voice actor, she uses her voice to interpret the characters in my writing. Deduction, it's also on this TV, right? Xiang Wan is eager to learn. Well, it's similar to your love of watching theaters at that time. Liang Shanbo, Zhu Yingtai, etc. are all fake. The TV is a theater stage. The appearance of people is expanded, like a shadow puppet, and then put on these screens. On the stage, let's perform. Xiang Wan didn't quite understand, but there were so many strange things, she could only accept it. She would not be surprised if Yu Zhou said anything to her again. She regards this period of time travel as a dream in gossip, or when she dies, she will either go to or be in the immortal class, which is also bizarre and rare. It's just like a naive child, starting all over again. So, she tilted her head gently, her long hair hanging down. It was Su Chang's voice that appeared just now. She played your role like this. Yes, you know how to infer other things from one instance. Yu Zhou praised her again with a crooked smile. This Miss Xiang is very interesting. She happened to show up when she left her job and was bored at home, so she could talk to her and relieve her boredom. But she is also called Wan Wan. She looks like a little bowl of tea. It would be great if Wan Wan became a spirit. She could turn her back into a cat and take her out without anyone noticing. Yu Zhou thought so. Ah! Yu Zhou raised a finger. I know what you can do now. CV, you can learn to do CV. Xiang Wan looked at her in confusion. Yu Zhou patted his fist self-consciously. Yes, you have such a nice voice, and you can enroll in an online class and find a teacher to guide you, and I will invest in a set of equipment for you. Then you can pick up the work at home, son. With your qualifications, it's hard to say how much you can earn, but you can subsidize a little bit. What do you think? It was only at the end that I remembered to ask Xiang Wan for advice. I think. Xiang Wan felt that no matter what kind of profession, it's probably not as free of threshold as Yu Zhou, who thought it was a dream. I'll order a set of equipment for you right now. Yu Zhou opened Jingdong, closed it again, opened the WeChat dialog box, and sent a voice message to F. Mr. F, I want to ask you a question. If you want to learn to be a CV, what should you use? Is the entry-level equipment better? She was very interested. She lowered her eyes to Xiang Wan, pursed her lips and smiled, then turned her head and continued to watch Yang Guang on TV. After one episode was finished on TV and was about to skip to the next paragraph, Xiang Wan sensed Yu Zhou's gaze, turned to her hesitantly, and asked her with his eyes. Yu Zhou held the mobile phone in his palm, pouted his chin, and was thinking, I suddenly discovered that your age conversion in ancient times is not the same as ours in modern times, is it? What does this mean? You said you were 18, but when I saw the way you smiled just now, your expression was similar to that of my sister. Sister Lingajin. Almost 30. 30, Xiang Wan whispered, in our court, if you marry early and have children and grandchildren, you may be able to be a grandmother. Yu Zhou chuckled, in our case, it might be a blessing not to get married. Xiang Wan's eyes wandered, and he didn't ask any more questions. It's still early, and it's boring. Let me give you the knowledge of popular science dubbing. Seeing her silence, Yu Zhou thought for a while and said. Xiang Wan raised the corner of her mouth, okay. Yu Zhou cleared his throat. The craft of dubbing has been passed down through many dynasties, and it is divided into two factions, the North and the South. The world calls it, Southern Suisings, and North 3. Xiang Wan was silent, and asked her after a while, did you make it up? How do you know? It's not like serious talk. I just think, what's going on in the South or North, it sounds a bit more dignified. Yu Zhou waved his hand. Sansheng is a big dubbing studio, and there are many, many powerful dubbing teachers in it. And Su Chong is alone. She approached Xiang Wan, do you understand? I understand what? It means that Su sings very well, and he can be as famous as a whole top dubbing studio as a freelancer. Oh! Xiang Wan nodded. Yu Zhou frowned, what expression do you have? Xiangwan smiled softly, I think, you seem to be honored. Can this also be seen? Yu Zhou admitted, there is a little bit. She leaned back on the sofa, with her arms on the armrest, and her voice was a bit vicissitudes, she is my ex-girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend. That's right, we used to be, sworn to each other, we were in love with each other, you and I were in love, but we separated. Yu Zhou said. Xiangwan glanced at Yu Zhou's smiling lips and slightly wrinkled brows, and asked her, why? It's a long story. Yu Zhou sighed, this kind of gossip is not suitable for talking when we first met. After all, there are so many fans. If it gets out, it will scare people to death. I can't do anything. Xiangwan lowered his head and looked at his fingertips. I know, but heavy gossip can't be said when we first met, this is the principle. Yu Zhou's brows furrowed even deeper. If you want to shake everything out, it seems that this person is not worth digging. Xiangwan nodded, bent over to get a glass of water, and drank it dignifiedly. Yu Zhou lowered his head and was about to play with his mobile phone when F's message came again. It is a screen recorder. Yu Zhou opened it unpreparedly, and the screen recording was the chat interface between F and Su Chang. The cursor clicked on the white voice bar next to Su Chang's profile picture, and Su Chang asked, where is the author? What did the author say? There was a message of F on the top of the phone. Yu Zhou clicked on it, and she sent a snarky voice, Ms. Su wants to ask your opinion on the audition file, I think her question is too rude, so I sent it to you to hear, is there any? Have. The nasal sound of these words is a bit heavy, and the mouth is still pondering for a second or two, which is easy to indulge people's imagination. She may have just woken up, after all, she often turns day and night upside down, if there is no work and no Yu Zhou calls her, she can sleep until the afternoon. It may also be that after finishing work in the morning, during the break between meals, I wiped my mouth with a tissue, took a sip of water, and asked this question again. Because once, Yu Zhou thought that Su Chang's tone of voice on the phone with her was too cold, and replied to her, don't talk to me so dryly. Su Chang laughed softly on the other end of the phone, took a sip of water, and asked her, then how can I get wet? That's it, after drinking a sip of water, with a laughing sound, it is wet. Yu Zhou came to his senses with great difficulty. Instead of replying to F, he opened his own Weibo. After scrolling through the readers' comments and answering a few questions, suddenly the phone vibrated and a private message came in. The acronym for the message is F. Yu Zhou clicked on it, and it was an unfamiliar fan who said to her, F. Yu Zhou paused, and unconsciously swiped his thumb twice on the screen. But he was not in a hurry to quit to see the new followers. He just closed this private message and continued to read the next one. As if the private message had been agreed upon, 3 or 4 messages popped up at once. Sherlock Holmes type, it's the shrine. Isn't it? Chai Chai, the main character of the shrine is singing, isn't it? See through everything, Chai Chai, I understand. Push glasses.jpg. Yu Zhou's pen name is 8 Great Imperial Envoys, which is very masculine, but he writes lily novels. Old readers called her Cha Cha because it was too easy to be pronounced as Cha Cha, and later became Chai Chai. Yu Zhou laughed, what do you know, you know. Then close the private message interface, enter the personal homepage, and open the fan list. The pure blue profile picture is very eye-catching, and Su Chang doesn't have a screen name, so he is called Su Chang. Don't change your name when you go, don't change your surname when you sit down, Su Chang is the most open-minded person she has ever met. In this regard, the 4 words below the name are no profile, and the bottom is from the personal homepage. From the way of following, it can be concluded that Su Chong first searched her ID, browsed her Weibo, and then followed her. Yu Zhou is actually smart and careful, but her cleverness and carefulness are always used in such boring places. The thumb swiped and pulled 2 or 3 times, and added a few fake movements. It seemed that when he clicked follow on the right side, it was especially calm, as if his hands were slippery. Seeing the 4 grey words follow each other appear, Yu Zhou entered Su Chang's homepage logically. Wow, the number of fans has already exceeded 1 million. It is not on the top, but scrolling down, there are 3 or 4 posts in a row, all of which are open. It took about 2 or 3 days to get one post, and it was long overdue to even retweet the drama post. Looking at her follow list again, she only followed 49, and the one at the top, called 8 Great Imperial Envoys, only had more than 2,000 followers, not even a member of Weibo. It is incompatible with the long list of celebrities whose profiles are actor, or director, or 3-tone studio. What a shame, Yu Zhou wants to buy some noodles. The truth is, before she even asked how to buy fans, the number of fans changed from 2 to 3. Thanks to Su's attention, Yu Zhou's fans grew faster than his purchases. Yu Zhou's mood was very complicated, and after a few strokes, he realized that this strange emotion was called sarcasm. Back then when she and Su Chong slept in the same bed, the two of them were strangers on all social platforms, and even she dared not use Su Chang's account for listening to songs. And they finally got close to each other after they broke up. Unconsciously press and hold the screen, pull it down, and flick it again. I thought some news would pop up, but suddenly I saw the new follower with the pure blue avatar post a Weibo. The weather is great. 4 words with a full stop, published 1 minute ago, very exaggerated, almost 1,000 comments in an instant. Click to comment. Quick-sighted type, 1. Unbelievable type, the sofa is me. Be courteous and respectful, Mr. Su is good. Hugs with love.jpg very funny type, it turns out that singing will post original Weibo. Funny.jpg. I saw 1 or 2 mentions of Yu Zhou sporadically. Hey, Mr. Su, I saw your attention, didn't you? Yu Zhou's hair stood on end in an instant. She didn't know why, but anyway, the hairs stood on end. Fortunately, this comment was drowned out in the blink of an eye, very inconspicuous. Yu Zhou exited, and then scrolled down to see the good morning he posted a few hours ago, 15 comments, which is already a lot. Sliding up again, Su Chong did not move, nor did he reply to any comments. There is no explanation for paying attention to her. Look, this is Su Chong, never guessing, always close. Always, give you 1 candy, and then, just give you 1 candy. There is no why, no motivation, no trajectory of any behavior, and she never shares her thoughts. Whether you taste sweetness or sourness in sugar, she doesn't expect your feedback. Deserves to be looked up to. You seem a little sad. A voiceless voice came from her ear, pulling her back to reality. Yu Zhou turned her face to look at Xiang Wan, who was concerned. The sunlight from the floor-to-ceiling windows jumped out of her hair. She was sitting upright, like an eternally elegant kitten. Even Shui Lingling's eyes are very similar, with large pupils, like black gemstones. Yu Zhou thought that it is difficult to see such eyes now, probably because there were no electronic products in ancient times, and their eyes were well protected, always clear and clean, and not deformed at all. Yeah, I'm so sad. Yu Zhou leaned on the armrest with his body crooked, I'm so sad. What is it called, mush? That's it, nobody cares. It's that, whatever you do, even if you run naked in the street, and someone mentions it, it's who cares. Bear. Run naked. Miss you, you have such a habit. Xiang Wan tucked the corners of his mouth with a complicated expression. I didn't. Yu Zhou sat upright and stared at her. Metaphor, do you understand the metaphor? That is to say, you have written a lot of things with great effort, but no one read them. From morning to night, 3 comments are amazing. Can you understand that kind of loneliness, that kind of loneliness, that kind of loneliness? In this way, Xiang Wan thought in embarrassment, my sister's and my boudoir's calligraphy has always been worth a lot of money. Yu Zhou laughed angrily, you are awesome. She leaned on the armrest again, you are all good, I am a rookie, okay. Vegetable. Yu Zhou stared at her, seeing that she only said one word, he dragged on a long tone and said nothing more. So Yu Zhou narrowed his eyes, Xiang Wan, I found that you are also quite bad. You are used to saying one word, and I will explain it to you, so you are lazy now and only say one word. Xiang Wan bent the corners of his mouth in embarrassment, and lowered his head gracefully. Actually, Miss Yu is very powerful. Oh? I would like to hear more about it. Xiang Wan narrated, calling the wind and rain, cooking eggs with bare hands, taking the soul and sound, and changing shape and shadow. Hiss! Don't be so nasty, modern people know this. Yu Zhou was a little embarrassed. I've never seen anyone else before, but in the hot summer now, the coolness of the room is brought by the girl, so Awan is grateful. Xiang Wan smiled. Is she comforting herself? Yu Zhou flashed his eyes. Thank you, ass, she has been teasing this girl like a monkey, and always trying to scare her. Awan, Awan, these 2 words are a bit pretentious at first, but when they come out of Xiang Wan's mouth, they sound very pleasant. Yu Zhou felt a little guilty and decided to treat her better. Ask her, I forgot to ask you, do you want to go back? Naturally. Xiang Wan's eyes darkened, it's not suitable to stay in a foreign land for a long time. That. However, I thought about it all night and watched the stage all day, and I understood a lot. Everything in the world has its own destiny. Once it comes, it will be at ease. Just wait. Waiting for what? Xiang Wan wasn't sure, but she still smiled peacefully, I might go back when the next thunderstorm strikes. At that time, I will keep all my pearls and hairpins as food expenses. Too precious. Yu Zhou said. It's not precious, and it's a kind, warm, Loki, just an awe-inspiring good man. Said to Wan. The show is over. What? Yu Zhou asked. Yang Guang. Oh, then, let's watch something else. She picked up the remote control, screened on the screen, and suddenly asked Xiang Ban, do you think my life is boring? I eat, sleep, watch TV, write novels, read gossip, and occasionally play mahjong. Sigh. Yu Zhou sighed. Xiang Wan smiled. Yu Zhou glanced at her, I know, you just came here, and everything you see is new. After a few days, you won't think so. Xiang Wan was very strange, she always felt that this girl had some self-loathing. But in fact she looks fair and bright, even in a loose t-shirt and shorts, she looks youthful and clean. I'm sorry, I have nothing to entertain you. I don't have anything at home, and I don't like anything. Yu Zhou danced the show casually, I don't like shopping, I don't like dressing up, I don't like going out to have fun and socialize, I don't like socializing. My friend, I can't even get excited about chasing a star. Xiang Wan took a sip of water and recalled, in the past, I was in the house, and I didn't go out easily, and I only went out to worship Buddha and burn incense during the New Year's festival, and Shang Yuan festival. Beautiful talents and talented men. Huazan first came up, guessing riddles and setting off lanterns, and interacting with each other. Tell my heart. Oh, no wonder she was so at home. In comparison, at least there is TV, right? Look at it later. I'll take you to the garden downstairs at night for a walk. You don't need a health code if you don't leave the community. If you're bored in the future, you can go for a walk. Xiang Wan promised, thank you. How about the royal treatment, and the Imperial Garden. Yu Zhou raised his eyebrows and smiled. Xiang Wan put his hands behind his face, put his arms on the armrest of the sofa, and looked at her. You look so handsome. Handsome? Yu Zhou raised an eyebrow again. Xiang Wan turned his head. It's too late. Amidst the loud music, she tilted her head in confusion, looked at the screen, and then at Yu Zhou. The girl inside looks like you a little bit. Ah! Yu Zhou cast a glance. Sister Lang? Yu Wenwen. Yu Zhou laughed. This is my sister. Look, they are all surnamed Yu. She went to participate in the show, so she let the cat hear. Is this true? This statement? Yu Zhou shook his shoulders narrowly. It's a fake. Xiang Wang cast an annoyed look at her, with anger but not anger. Yu Zhou put his hands behind his back and looked at her half lying down, suddenly had a strange feeling, as if he had become a disciple and was molesting the eldest lady. Wow, the word molestation, although a bit earthy, is inappropriate. She laughed for a while, and the phone rang again. This time, she tapped the screen a few times with her fingers before picking it up to unlock it. It was WeChat, and she was pulled into a group by F. No one spoke in the group, and F chatted with her privately. Teacher Yu. I only called him a title, waiting for her to ask. A question mark was sent. Teacher Su has brought in the assistant director. Peng Haozi. 2 exclamation points, one less than when Su Chang joined. It seems that he has learned to calm down. Yu Zhou really wants to get back to her. Teacher F, you are also the producer of Zhir App, a well-known radio drama platform, with many big IPs in your hands, and you have cooperated with dozens of big names. Why are you still so passionate? After thinking about it, she realized that perhaps, Teacher F wanted to mobilize the enthusiasm of the performer. In other words, Teacher F felt that Yu Zhou was lucky, and she couldn't calm down for a long time. Who said it wasn't? A novel with less than 700 collections doesn't even count as an IP. If it wasn't for catching up with the current popularity of radio dramas, how would she have the opportunity to do dramas? She has also heard of Peng Haozi, a well-known dubbing director of Sansheng Studio, who is deeply involved in the film industry and hasn't directed a radio drama for about 3 to 5 years. 5 years ago, she directed a radio drama called Thinking of the World, which is a classic in the circle, and it is still the white moonlight that many people miss. Su Chang and Peng Yuji, this formula is almost equivalent to traffic and word of mouth. She was the one who brought him here, making it hard for Yu Zhou to wonder if there was a sense of in this move. The 4 words of are really irresistible. Therefore, borrowing Yu Zhou's 10 guts, he didn't dare to let his thoughts stay in this direction for more than a second. She clicked on the newly created group, and F began to host in the group. After introducing them one by one, she found that it was a group chat of the production team, which included the director, screenwriter, and post-production, as well as the author, that is, Yu Zhou. With a sigh of relief, there is no Su singing. She wanted to say again, look, this is Su Chang. After pulling someone over, I didn't have any intention of joining the group chat. Everything is so businesslike. Several people greeted each other cordially. Peng Haozi arrived late, probably because he was busy. The first sentence was as follows: Hello, everyone. Su Chang and Zhou Ling have been cast as the lead actors, and Gu Qian and Qing Shen are the co-stars. I've invited the other supporting roles. The screenwriter sent me the characters. I'll be reading the script this Saturday and Sunday at 8 p.m. Are you free after 1 o'clock, everyone? Have. No problem. Yu Zhou didn't dare to speak. Where's the author? After waiting for a while, Peng Haozi asked. Ah, I'm fine. Yu Zhou said quickly. She wanted to say sorry, she didn't know that the author would also participate, so she was slow to reply, but before she finished hesitating, she saw Peng Yuji send a message, well, that's the deal. Happy cooperation. Happy cooperation. Yu Zhou said. Acting vigorously and resolutely, Yu Zhou was a little nervous. She was so nervous that she was still thinking wildly while eating. He still ordered takeaway for dinner, and Xiang Wan ate slowly, making Yu Zhou wonder if what he ordered was roast leg of lamb. After eating, he packed up the takeaway, tied a plastic bag and put it by the door, and went to the kitchen to wash his hands, go shopping for a while, digest food. Good. Come and wash your hands too, I'll find you a set of clothes to wear out. Yu Zhou took out a few tissues to wipe his hands. Okay. It's still the same word. Everyone is a lady, so obedient, Yu Zhou sighed, even more obedient than bowls. Yu Zhou found a clean short suit, and found a few hair ties on the dressing table. Xiangpu's hair is very long, and it might be hot when going downstairs, so it's better to tie it up. She herself doesn't use a hair tie, because she doesn't like to go out. This hair tie is still sung by Sue before. Yu Zhou took a closer look and found that there were 1 or 2 black hairs on it. She took it off, crumpled it up, and threw it into the trash can. Soon, Xiang Wan changed his clothes and came out. Yu Zhou took a closer look and found that his chest was weird, and he was still not wearing underwear. Yu Zhou smiled, somewhat embarrassed, you have to wear it when you go out. So awkward. Xiang Wan stared at her without saying a word. Let me demonstrate it to you. Yu Zhou coughed twice, took the underwear over, put it on over his short-sleeved t-shirt, passed it through both arms, and then buckled it behind his back, hooked and pulled, and it was done. She propped her shoulders and turned her back to Xiang Wan, motioning for her to take a good look. Then he took it off, handed it to Xiang Wan, and raised his finger to the corridor, go and change it. Xiang Wan bowed his head and held the underwear. While walking, he practiced hooking the circle with a small hook. When she came out again, her face was a little red, and she walked a little slower, but her chest was not as abrupt as before, so Yu Zhou nodded in satisfaction. He asked her again, are you ready? Xiang Wan took a deep breath, nodded, walked to the entrance, and put on a pair of slippers that Yu Zhou had prepared for going out. This belly band is a bit small. She lowered her head and said softly. It took Yu Zhou 2 or 3 seconds to understand the amount of information in this sentence, and then she called Xiang Wan by name and surname. Xiang Wan, you offended me. Xiang Wan is naive. Don't pretend, it's almost the same, can you strangle you to death? Yu Zhou was furious. Xiang Wan pursed his lips and smiled reservedly. This look is a little cute. Yu Zhou had no choice but to stare at her and walk towards the elevator. Xiang Wan followed, looking up curiously at the red numbers on the elevator door, jumping up and down. The numbers jumped, and her eyes blinked. Yu Zhou smiled. Why is it so fun, time traveler? While waiting for the elevator, she asked Xiang Wan, is it really tight? If it's tight, I'll buy you some new ones tomorrow. Don't come to modern times, you will die under the quilt. She whispered to herself, feeling a little funny again. Xiang Wan said, some are out of breath, but I can still hold on. Yu Zhou smiled, why are you insisting on this matter? That's fine, I'll buy it for you tomorrow. She glanced at it and said uncomfortably, I'll buy you 2 sizes up. You're only 18, and you're still developing. The last 4 words are so sad. Xiang Wan agreed, and the elevator door opened with a ding, and her shoulders trembled a little, seeing that Yu Zhou walked into the steel box first, and then stretched out his hand towards her. Hurry up, come in. The door will pinch you for a while. Yu Zhou waved his fingers. Xiang Wan hurriedly pulled up and trotted in. Looking around, there were copper and iron mirrors on the top, bottom, left, and right. The door closed automatically. She stared at it vigilantly. Then the elevator suddenly fell. This was the first time she had such a weightless feeling. She was very uncomfortable, closed her eyes tightly, and her breathing became short of breath. Feeling Yu Zhou squeeze her hand, "If you feel uncomfortable, come closer." Xiang Wan posted the past, full of cool breeze, warm and fragrant nephrite. Yu Zhou grabbed her hand and tied it around his abdomen. He also stretched out his right hand to hold her wrist. The elevator door opened, and an uncle stood outside, carrying a basket of vegetables, looking at the two of them strangely. One girl leaned against another girl's neck impatiently, as if drunk. Relying on the mask, Yu Zhou looked back at him confidently, and then, while meeting the uncle's eyes, put his hand on Xiang Wan's shoulder, supported her, and said, "Honey, we're here, let's go." Oh, the uncle squinted, exchanged positions with them, entered the elevator, and his prying eyes were rejected by the automatic door. Xiang Wan was dizzy, went out of the lobby, and felt a little better after blowing a burst of hot wind. She stood up straight from Yu Zhou's body with a disheveled face, and her breathing made the mask expand and contract. "Honey, what is it?" "My nickname for you. I have small characters, and my name is Axie." "Oh, you can start another one in modern times. That one is a bit earthy." Xiang Wan stopped and tilted his head. "You lied to me. In TV dramas, there is also wife. It means wife." Yu Zhou also stopped. "You know, why don't you ask me? I want to hear you explain why you call me that." "You didn't see the look in that uncle's eyes just now. He thought I kidnapped you. In my desperation, that was the only expedient measure." Yu Zhou was very innocent. Xiang Wan disagreed. "You can also express intimacy by calling me a sister." "This." Xiang Wan walked forward. "You want to frighten him, but you just like to play tricks. You're Lala, so it's not good." The last sentence came from Xiang Wan's back. Yu Zhou was speechless. Suddenly a little depressed. "This Miss Prime Minister is very clever, growing up so fast. I'm afraid I won't be able to fool her in the future." The garden of the community is very large, with mountains and water, pavilions and bridges, just like a delicate small park. Yu Zhou accompanied Xiang Wan to walk on the stone road among the grass fields, sighing at his eyesight. "Fortunately, I bought such a green community with such a large garden at that time. Even if it was blocked and I couldn't get out, I could still enjoy life. It's just that when I'm alone, I often don't bother to move and don't go downstairs at all. It's a bit reckless. Fortunately, this lady from a great family came here, and her posture of crossing trees and flowers is very beautiful, and she has brought the ordinary neighborhood out of the glory." She put her hands in her pockets and walked a little behind Xiang Wan. When Xiang Wan noticed it, she turned her head to wait for her, and asked, "Why are you always behind me?" "Hey!" Yu Zhou had never thought about this question. She was not used to standing side by side with people, she only liked to look at people's backs. Xiang Wan turned to her and said, "If it's a personal maidservant, follow her half a step later, make a rough girl, then take another 3 steps, and then a servant. There is no difference between you and me, you should stand by my side." Yu Zhou is a bit silly, no one has ever seriously told her the rules of standing, and no one has ever cared much about whether he is standing by her side. So she looked at Xiang Wan under the moonlight for a long time. Then he said, "It's not that I don't want to go there, look at this stone road, 2 people, it can't go down." Looking down at the narrow path, Xiang Wan frowned, "This path should be widened." "Yes, the Prime Minister's mansion allocated some money." Yu Zhou smiled. Xiang Wan looked up at her. Yu Zhou glanced at her with a smile, brushed past her, and walked in front of her. Xiang Wan was taken aback for a moment, and then followed. The two came down from the small hill and walked to a slightly wider road illuminated by street lights. This time they walked side by side, one with his pockets in his pockets and the other with his hands down, walking slowly. When he was about to reach the end, Yu Zhou raised his chin and pointed to the west. "This is the west gate, did you see the black iron gate? We came from the east gate just now." There are also the South Gate and the North Gate. As long as you don't go out, you can visit these 4 gates. There is a cultural square in the community. Some old people often play chess, write, dance and practice swords there. You can also go to see it when you are bored. Look. The south of the central lake is a place for fitness. There are some fitness equipment and slides for children. If you are interested, I will bring it to you tomorrow. I am tired today. Yu Zhou introduced it carefully, then turned his head and walked back. She introduced it very comfortably, with the style of "this square inch of land is the country I laid down for you. Don't show off at this time, when will it be? These added values are all reflected in the housing price. I don't usually use it." The two came back from a stroll, and walked past neighbors in 2s and 3s. "You, since you have resigned from office, where did you get the money to buy this house?" Looking at the garden, Xiangwan was no less impressive than the Prime Minister's mansion. "To be honest," Yu Zhou sighed, "I'm a rich second generation." "Rich? Here we go again." Yu Zhou glanced at her, "It's almost like you. Shadowed by the ancestors." "Why? Not like. Why doesn't it look like it?" Xiangwan stood with her at the elevator entrance, looking at her calmly again. "All right. I saved some money myself. My mother made a big fortune. I was going to buy a small apartment. Well, Su sang some money and changed it to this one." Yu Zhou lightly kicked the marble tiles at the foot of the elevator door. At that time, Su Chong said that she also wanted to move here, and the two of them lived in a larger and more comfortable room. She knew that Su Chong was very good at making money, his family was well off, and the sponsorship money was nothing. She thought that the two had been together for a few years, and they would live together sooner or later, so she didn't give up. After they broke up, she wanted to sell the house and return the money to Su Chong with interest. Su Chong said, "Don't worry. I didn't say no need to pay it back, what I said was, don't worry." The intermediary also advised her that the house was purchased less than 2 years ago. If the house is sold now, the taxes and fees will be very high, which is not worthwhile. Later, her fund took advantage of the wind and made some money. After she resigned, she counted her savings and withdrawn the Provident Fund she had worked for several years, plus the copyright fee for selling novels. Called in the past, almost, and almost a little interest. Su Chong didn't reply. It's okay not to reply, but it's embarrassing to reply anything. Thursday and Friday pass peacefully. 2 women who were unemployed at home lived a life of staying at home and occasionally learning about modern technology. But Yu Zhou didn't intend to let her into the kitchen. Besides, the eldest lady has never been in the kitchen before. In the blink of an eye, it was Saturday, the day engraved in Yu Zhou's DNA. Reading around the script, I don't know why, these 4 words seem particularly advanced. As a biological mother, Yu Zhou felt that he was also honored. "So I got up early in the morning and posted a Weibo, if all home appliances and furniture can be repaired into monsters, who will be the king?" Soon, 1 or 2 Weibo fans commented on her, "Woke up so early winmilk.jpg. Generally, those who call her big are new fans who have paid attention to her in the past 2 days. In the past 3 days, Yu Zhou's Weibo followers have exceeded 10,000. Or, thanks to that person. After receiving several strange replies one after another, she refreshed again, and a pure blue avatar commented, "Alarm clock. Because it absorbs the most resentment and has the strongest ability. Depend on." Yu Zhou cursed in his heart. The Weibo instantly became lively as if the scene was blown up, and many comments flooded in, and they took the net to catch Su Chong, who was haunting. Judging from the fans' reactions, it seems that Su Chong seldom commented on others, especially when he commented on a full 15 characters, plus 3 punctuation marks. The comments were so enthusiastic that Yu Zhou couldn't pretend to be blind. So she purposely stayed cold for 5 minutes, and then replied in a crowd, Ah ha 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 ha, the teacher is so humorous. Su Chong should know Yu Zhou very well. When she is scared, she says ha 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 ha, when she is happy, she says ha 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 ha, when she is embarrassed, she adds ah before ha ha ha. Yu Zhou waited for a while, but Su Chong didn't move. Then she clicked on forwarding and comment reminders, thinking about whether to block this traffic-heavy Weibo. F's WeChat came unexpectedly. Teacher Yu. She knew that F should want to ask about Weibo interaction. But F told her, there is a post about you in the forum. F forwarded a link, and Yu Zhou tried to open it, but he could only see the main building with not much information. It probably means that Su Chong has followed a nonsense author. Do you want to cooperate? Looking down, it is time to download the app. Yu Zhou sighed and started to download the app. While waiting for the app to install for 30 seconds, is she afraid that others will discover the relationship between Su Chong and her, or is she curious whether others expect her to cooperate with Su Chong? Ha 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 ha, it's a joke, this is a line from the famous 30-second library literature. Still in the mood to make jokes about himself, not too nervous, Yu Zhou thought so. When I finally opened the post through the app, I found that I had turned 2 pages. It's nothing special, and it's just the guesswork of listeners who follow the radio drama. If you can't find her vague text, someone kindly pastes the address, and the other party politely thanks. Shame on. In the end, there was a small point of controversy, probably because a netizen said, "How is it possible? What level of IP is Su Xing's main character? I probably know him in life." Below is a comment from a netizen defending Su Xing. Don't say that, it seems that singing only picks IP, in fact, no matter big IP or small IP, as long as it is a good story, she is interested. I think don't pay too much attention to IP, as long as you make it with your heart, you will be very welcome as an audience. Yes, 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 Yu Zhou nodded. Turning off the discussion on the internet, she still felt a little sad after realizing it. Even if there is only one person, very unobtrusively and cryptically enough, expressing that her story is not worthy of Su's singing, she has such a deep-seated sadness the size of a sesame seed. If it's another partner, she won't care at all, maybe she will say cheaply, "Yes, I'm really touched." But if it's Su singing, it won't work. Maybe it's because, after several years, she couldn't say with confidence that I'm right with you, right? After playing with Xiangwan all day, I checked the time at 7:45 p.m. Yu Zhou said hello to Xiangwan, went into the bedroom with his mobile phone, tested the network, and waited for Lian Mei in the chat group. The remaining 15 minutes were spent swiping Weibo. Then a WeChat call came, saying that 8 o'clock was 8 o'clock, and Peng Yan, who was vigorous and resolute, was right. The WeChat avatars of several friends lit up one by one. When the later teacher and screenwriter teacher came in, they all closed the microphone skillfully, so Yu Zhou also closed the microphone. Her well-prepared self-introduction didn't come in handy, because the crew didn't exchange pleasantries at all. Peng Yuji's voice sounded, "It's all here, let's start," the script reading of S101 of the Shrine. Yu Zhou has never heard of the habit of using as the opening, let alone Peng Haozi's voice, which is terribly nice. De Yuji's voice sounds like the kind of 10 cm high heels. Peng Yuji began to sort out the plot of the script, and the screenwriter would explain what he didn't understand. When it came to setting up the scene, he would open the mic for discussion in a timely manner in the later stage. Everything is in order, except Yu Zhou didn't know what to say or not. It may be that Peng Yanzi, who was on the opposite side, noticed that someone had been silent, so he stopped and asked, "Does the author have any comments?" Yu Zhou seemed to be called by the teacher. She thought about it, did not turn on the microphone, and typed, "I don't have a script." Peng Yuji didn't say anything, and typed. In the WeChat group. It should be sent to F who did not participate in the group call. Then, in the later stage of closing the wheat, he sent a message, at F, the author has not received the script, give it to her. The screenwriter followed suit, give it to her. The third give it to her. Was sent by Peng Haozi. Yu Zhou laughed lightly on this side, and suddenly felt that director Peng was also very approachable and cute. We'll repeat it too. F was brought out by 8, and privately chatted with Yu Zhou to send the script, just in case. F joined Lian Mei. Peng Haozi probably got up to pour a glass of water, and after Yu Zhou received the script, he continued to follow along. When it came to a scene in the 7th act, Peng Haozi was a little confused. Facing the script, I said to myself, how is this room laid out? Do the 3 people sleep in opposite corners? How big is it? During the rehearsal, I asked the actors to move around and set the distance between the voices. Yu Zhou glanced at the group chat interface, then turned off the mic in the later stage, and the screenwriter turned off the mic. She was about to turn on the mic to explain, when a female voice came from a little further away from Peng Haozi's end. A room, chapter 4 of the original book has a layout. Cool and magnetic, it sounds so good that Yu Zhou's scalp tingles. She saw the screenwriter's microphone turned on, and then turned off in an instant. In the later stage, it was as stable as Mount Tai. The private chat message of F on the top popped up, damn it, that was Sue's voice just now. I'm not hallucinating, am I? Did you hear that? Yu Zhou thought for a while, and replied, I heard. Peng Yuji didn't pay attention to the small private actions of the two, and ran to read the original book on his own, as if turning his head to say something. As soon as he raised his breath, Yu Zhou heard Su Chang's soft voice, shut up the mic. A calm reminder, as if it fell on someone's ear. Judging from the distance of the voice, it seemed that he was sitting not too close behind Peng Ho. Peng Yuji's microphone was turned off. Yu Zhou didn't quite remember when it would start again, and she wasn't very focused on the following reading. There is only one thought in my mind, why is Su Chang there? How long has she been listening? At this moment, are you still there? In the 30s of, is he there, or is he? This sentence comes from Library Power Outage for 30 seconds and Making a Wish. Close the mic. Yu Zhou thought about these 2 words all night. In Yu Zhou's opinion, sound without pictures is the most deceptive. Because it mobilizes your emotions to the greatest extent, but also stimulates your imagination to the greatest extent. Imagination is invincible. For example, just now, before Su Chang reminded her to close the mic, there was the sound of a page turning over. What did this mean? Of course, he wasn't worried about being discovered by Yu Zhou. This page of the book might be a random magazine, or it might be a script she printed out in advance. If it was the former, she might have listened to it after finishing work in the shed. If it was the latter, she might have made a special trip to the shed to find Peng Haozi, who had just finished work, and she came prepared. Su Chang didn't make a sound until the end of the work, even when everyone turned on the mic collectively at the end and said thank you for your hard work, good night. She didn't make a sound. So Yu Zhou's imagination was used to guess again, guessing whether she would leave or not. Hey, she threw the phone aside and lay on the bed, thinking that Su Chang's participation might not be her luck, but doom. The door was knocked lightly. Open the door. Yu Zhou sat up. Xiang Ban pushed the door open, only leaned half of his body reservedly, and asked, I heard nothing inside, is it over? It's over, I'm exhausted. Xiang Ban smiled, Miss Yu, are you hungry? I didn't eat too much for dinner. I'm not hungry, I'll wash up and go to bed soon. Xiang Ban said, ask Miss Yu if she's hungry, which means I'm hungry. Depend on. Use her words, come to her army. Yu Zhou turned over and said, go out, I'll cook a bowl of noodles for you. Fortunately, do something to divert attention. Xiang Wan was very polite, she didn't sit on the sofa waiting like the uncle, she just stood behind Yu Zhou like the supervisor, looking carefully. First, press the button of the kettle to boil a pot of water. Yu Zhou took out 2 cylindrical boxes from the storage box next to the refrigerator, tore open the packaging, opened several small bags, and put seasonings in them. Xiang Wan stopped talking. This palm-sized pouch, and Yu Zhou's shaking movements, really looked like poisoning. But the two have no grievances or enmities, so how could Miss Yu be so vicious? So she exhaled a breath, trying to comfort herself. After preparing the materials, Yu Zhou hung his neck while playing with his mobile phone while waiting for the water to boil. After a while, the water in the jug boiled, and the button popped out with a thump. Yu Zhou picked up the jug, filled the food box with water, then covered it, inserted a fork into it, and brought it out of the kitchen to the table in the dining room. Superior. Xiang Wan stared at the colorful food box. Miss Yu said it's cooked noodles. Incredible. You'll know in a while, almost. The two stood still for a few minutes, eyes wide open, and Yu Zhou glanced at the phone. It's ready to eat. He was the first to open it, and the fragrance wafted into his nostrils. Yu Zhou twitched his index finger, blew on it a few times, and then let out a mouthful. After eating deliciously, Xiang Wan frowned and moved his eyes up and down a few times before sticking to the fork to look like a tiger or a cat. Is it delicious? Yu Zhou asked her while chewing the noodles. It had a strange taste, but it was not unpalatable, not to mention it bothered Miss Yu from working late at night. It's delicious. Xiang Wan wiped his lips with paper, smiling. Looking at her expression, Yu Zhou felt very comfortable. If Xiang Wan could eat more deliciously, he would be even more comfortable. Just like every time Xiao Wan eats delicious wet food, she sheds tears. As the host of feeding, that sense of satisfaction, that sense of accomplishment, is about the same as one day she got up on Chenpi and found that yesterday's new chapter's comments had double digits. While eating noodles, Yu Zhou suddenly remembered something important. Let me tell you, today I participated in the script reading, which was really an eye-opener. This professional dubbing is different. It's different from listening to a dubbing show. It's ironic to say that when she was with Su Chong, she deliberately kept a distance, and she had never been so deeply involved. Didn't you see, Director Peng, post-production teacher, screenwriter teacher, that's amazing. I was stunned by the technical terms. And he's very tall. I feel like I'm in a movie. Xiang Wan didn't understand, and listened quietly. So my conclusion is that this industry has great potential. You have to get into it, and you have to get into it seriously. Yu Zhou wanted to make a gesture of pushing his glasses, but when he raised his hand and found that he didn't have glasses, he put them down again. Xiang Wan pondered, then, how do I get into the industry? Yu Zhou looked at her gentle long hair, and pretty eyebrows, and made quick calculations in his mind. After a while, she pulled out and took out the iPad from the side. It was a little difficult for her to read the interface that had been set to full traditional Chinese since yesterday. She opened the browser, entered a few words and searched. Finally, he handed the screen to Xiang Wan, who was facing him with satisfaction. Let's do the basics first. Starting tomorrow, get up at 7 every morning and practice tongue twisters. Tongue twister. Yeah, Yu Zhou tapped on the iPad. 800 pace setters headed to the north slope. I searched for it just now. Looking down at Xiang Wan, the search bar reads what tongue twisters to practice when practicing lines in Chinese opera. Yu Zhou followed her gaze and explained, I don't know how to dub, and I don't know what school there is. We are laymen, so we can only learn from it in all aspects. You know Chinese opera, many stars are from Chinese opera, but it's hot, Yang Mi is. Xiang Wan raised his eyes, Yang Mi is from Baidian. Yu Zhou was shocked, how do you know? Xiang Wan lowered his head and continued to look at the screen. When you were in the room, I wanted to read a book, so I asked this black box for help. I accidentally opened a page of the book, and the beauty in the letter was like a star, and the first one was this girl Yang Mi. When I click on her picture scroll, her life is revealed. I read it carefully and know a thing or two. Yu Zhou was dumbfounded and wanted to correct her. It didn't mean beauty is like a star, but beauty star in the browser recommendation column. But she didn't, because more importantly, she doubted, were all the ancients so smart? You have such a good memory, it's a pity that you don't remember your lines. Yu Zhou laughed. Xiang Wan still had a question, 7 o'clock, what time is it? Yu Zhou took out his mobile phone and checked, Chen Shi. Why is Chen Shi, is there auspicious time to pay attention to? No, Yu Zhou shook his head, it's just that you seem to be more diligent. Think about it, if you become famous in the future, you go to interviews to talk about the past, and you say you get up at 7 am to practice Kung Fu, and you say you get up at 11 am to do Kung Fu. Is that the same thing? She crossed her arms and suddenly felt like a manager. Xiang Wan put away the iPad and ate the last bite of noodles, remember. You practice first, I will find a way to get you an ID card. Yu Zhou said.